Hey everybody, Grill Father Johnny Al here today, and I'm going to smoke you a beef picanha that you can't refuse, and one of my buddies back here is going to help me out. Stay tuned, I'll be right back.
We are live from my backyard where I am smoking these meat like a brisket. I'm making meat now. Someone asked me, do I smoke meat? That's gonna be delicious. Yeah, if I smoke meat, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Hey gang, before we head inside, I just want to talk a little bit about what the picanha is. And you might know this kind of meat by other names such as the rump cap or the sirloin cap or also culotte steak. We'll see a little bit more closer when we get inside where this particular cut of meat comes from in the cow. Now, you will find this kind of meat most often in Brazilian steakhouses. That's where it's really popular, and they cook it on skewers and slice it and give it to you that way. It's also cooked and made into steaks. So this kind of meat averages about 2 to 4 pounds in weight. And I think the one I'm cooking today is like 2.7 pounds. It's triangular in shape, just like the tri-tip. But there are differences between the two cuts of meat. And the picanha is not an overused muscle on a cow. So it cooks up tender and flavorful and juicy. And to be quite honest, this is one of my favorite cuts of meat to smoke along with the tri-tip. So that all being said, let's head inside and get this thing started. We're inside now, and I just wanted to show you on the beef chart here where the picanha comes from. And it comes from right at the very top of the sirloin and the rump area. So it would be located about right here in this region of the cow. Here's the star of today's show, the picanha that I got from Wild Fork Foods. It's prime graded, and it's 2.73 pounds. And as you may be able to see here, there's a significant amount of red liquid in this packaging. The red liquid is myoglobin. And I just wanted to say a word about myoglobin. First and foremost, myoglobin is not blood. Blood is drained out at the beginning in the harvesting and processing. And what the myoglobin does is that it helps muscles store oxygen, and it helps give the red meat its red color. So what I'm going to do is take this over and cut the packaging off at the sink there, pat dry all that myoglobin off. Then we'll come back here and start the prep. We have the picanha out of its packaging, and we have it pat dried, and you can see the nice triangular shape, very similar to the tri-tip. And what really makes the picanha unique and different from the tri-tip is this layer, this fat cap that you see on the top there. And this fat cap is going to give us a lot of flavor in the cook. I am going to trim some of that, sharpen up my trimming knife here, give it a few swipes on my miniature sharpener. Really don't need this thick of a fat cap on there. I'm going to trim some of that off, get it down to maybe about 1/4 of an inch. I'm not going to do it all over. Let's flip it over and see what we have on the other side. Really not too much, so we're still maintaining our nice triangular shape. What I use for a binder is duck fat. I'll put a link in the description below. And this is just my binder of choice. Many people will use olive oil or mustard. You can use whatever you want. I don't use salt, and we have enough salt in our American diet. What I use in place of salt basically is a salt substitute, no salt, and accent, which is MSG. Don't believe the stories about MSG. Those all have been debunked. I am going to put a generous coat on the picanha here with the salt substitute, making sure I get all the sides. I will give a very light dusting of the MSG. And that gives me my salt substitute, basically 1-2 punch. What I'll end up with is using some 16 mesh coarse ground black pepper. And I get this from a company in Georgia called Lane's. This is the only kind of pepper I use when I cook. This will help with the bark formation. Set it in by lightly tapping it. Also, I do have a bonus ingredient that I like to include on beef, and it's rosemary. I'm just going to give this also a very light coating, just really on the two main surfaces, the top and the bottom. This will just help with the flavor profile and add a little bit of additional taste to the beef. All that's next then is to place the beef on a cooling rack. We'll put this on the rack and put this in the refrigerator overnight, uncovered. And then tomorrow, we can easily transport this out onto the cooking area. The cooking rack is also helpful when you want to take the meat off. It's always a clean surface at the beginning, so I don't have to worry about the grates out there. And we will get to smoking it tomorrow. The picanha has rested overnight, so it's cook day, and what we're going to do today is a two-step cooking process. One, we're going to sear the picanha, and B, we're going to put the picanha on the smoker in the pit boss. And the wood that I'm using in the pit boss today, almond wood pellets. The almond wood will give us a nice nutty and sweet flavor to the meat and will add nicely to the overall flavor profile of the finished picanha. Now, I just want to say a word about what I call the 4 T's for successful barbecuing: taste, tenderness, texture, and the most important, technique. If we don't get that technique correct, then the taste, tenderness, and texture, one or all of those may suffer in the end. Now, you may say, well, what about the T of temperature? Temperature is important, very important, but in my mind, I feel that temperature falls up under the T of technique. Now, I want to share with you my game plan for today, and what I use to manage the cook is my Texas North Barbecue and Griddle cook log. And what this cook log will allow me to do is it'll allow me to plan out my strategy, what I'm going to use for the day, and also help me keep track of the cook throughout the duration, and help me to monitor when I'm supposed to do the next thing and when it's time to spritz, how many times I've already spritzed, and so forth. And what that will do in the end is down the road, when I go to cook picanha again, I can pull the sheet out, which I'm going to show you here in a moment. I can pull that sheet out, see what I did in the previous cook, which would have been today, what the temperatures were outside, how the environmental ambient temperatures were possibly affecting things, what wood I used, and so forth, just to kind of jog my memory of what I did. Here is a more detailed view of my log sheet for today's cook. As you can see, we're going to be using the Pit Boss smoker, and we have the picanha that was 2.7 pounds that I got frozen from Wild Fork Foods. And the rub that we're using is the salt substitute and accent and 16 mesh coarse ground black pepper combination with a duck fat binder. The wood we're using is almond wood, and I'm also going to be using a water pan in the smoker. And under my notes there, we're going to be searing it first. Get a nice crust and eventually a good bark on it. We're going to be looking at smoking at 225 degrees today, and also looking for a 130 degree final internal temperature. And I'll be keeping track of any times that I spritz today. We'll keep track of the start and stop time for resting, and I'll also note what the weather was like today as well. So there you have it. That's our cook plan for today. The searing station is ready. The smoker is ready. So let's get cracking. You can see we have the searing station all set up right here. It's between 500 and 600 degrees. And we have the cast iron skillet in there. It's a Lodge. When we're done searing, then I'm going to take one step over right here to the smoker, the pit boss, and put it right in there. So a word or two about the searing process. I'm going to put down a light layer of canola oil on top of the cast iron skillet, then put the picanha on top of that. Then I get out my bacon press, which is a couple of pounds in weight, and I like to put that on there so that the whole surface of the picanha, the whole surface of the meat gets a nice sear on it and develops a nice crust. And we'll flip it over and do the same thing. Let's just open this up. We will get the canola oil put on here, and I'll just use my scraper here to distribute it nicely over the cast iron. And now we'll just take the picanha and put it right on there. Put this on top, and we'll let this sear for a couple of minutes. So let's check out how things are going on the sear on the beef side. And we'll just take our tongs here, give this a little flip. It's evenly browning. Put a little more oil on here. And now we're going to sear the fat cap side. Do the same thing. We'll put our bacon press on here. And I'm also going to sear the sides too, so that it has a nice crust the whole way around. Fat cap looks good. And we're going to smoke with the fat cap down. So I'm going to transfer this over into the Pit Boss smoker, which we have all set up, 225 degrees. I am just going to move that straight over, put it on just like that. I'm also going to use my water pan, hot water as always. Let's help with the moisture. And now it's the smoker's turn to do its thing. 225, and we're looking to get to 130 degrees internal temperature. We'll be checking back in a little bit. So we're about 45, 50 minutes into the cook. I want to give a check. My thermometer is saying we're about 116 degrees internal. Going to give it a little spritz of some apple cider vinegar. And we'll check back in a little bit. We're a few minutes over the 1 hour mark. My alarm is going off, so it's telling me that we're pretty much done. Let me just do a double check and see where we're at. We are looking for 130. We're showing 131, 132. I am going to take this off and let it rest. I will see you inside. 30 minutes later. The picanha has rested for 30 minutes. You don't have to rest it that long. I just like to rest it a little bit longer because essentially it is one big piece of steak. Now to go forward and slice it up, I'm going to take my Victorinox slicing knife here and give it a few swipes on the miniature sharpener just to make sure it's absolutely the sharpest it can be. And I'm going to slice on the double bias. Remember, we're cutting against the grain. So on the bias is at a 45-degree angle. And then on the double bias, you keep that angle and just turn it slightly. And what this is going to do is increase the surface area of each slice and also increase the tenderness. The picanha and the tri-tip are two of my favorite types of meat to smoke. This particular picanha smoked up in an hour, and I suspect it had to do something with the temperature. It was about 82 degrees ambient temperature outside today, so this cooked up faster than I thought it would. And let's take a look. There you have a nice pink center. You can see how juicy it is. I don't want to push too much of the juice out. It's really tender. And remember, we're after those 4 T's of successful barbecue. I suspect that you could just take this and pull it apart rather easily, as you can see there. And when you go to eat it, with it pulling apart like this, you're not even going to need a knife. All you're going to need is your fork, and your fork will cut right through that. I finished slicing up the rest of the picanha, so all that's left to do is go out and ring the dinner bell, let the gang know that it's time to eat. I'm pretty happy with the way that this cook turned out. The picanha was tasty and tender, as you saw. I was happy with the bark, so that covered the texture of the 4 T's. Now, I'm not going to do a taste test on camera. I never do, because I can't offer you a bite to eat, so I'm not going to eat in front of you. I'll leave the taste testing to you when you do your own picanha. And if you follow the technique that I outlined today, I'm confident that you will be happy with the taste, the tenderness, and the texture. And when you go to do your own taste test, you're going to have the same reaction as the greatest of all time. But I am going to give this picanha the Grill Father Johnny L stamp of approval. Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by the channel today. Hope you found this video useful and helpful. Would you do me a favor of hitting the like and subscribe buttons, as well as sharing this video with a family member or friend? Till next time, this is Grill Father Johnny L. Take care, God bless, and smoke on.